You're in the middle of a conversation, maybe it's a little tense, and then nothing. The other person just goes completely silent. It's confusing, right? It can even be pretty painful. Well, today we're going to get into the psychology of why that happens. So why do they suddenly go silent? It's a question so many of us have asked ourselves. One minute you're talking, and the next it feels like a wall just went up. They've shut down, they've withdrawn. What is going on there? And let's be honest, that's the real core of it, right? When you're on the receiving end of that silence, it can feel like a weapon. It feels like they don't care, like they're trying to punish you, or maybe they've just completely abandoned the conversation. And man, it hurts. But what if it's not what you think? What if for a lot of people, that silence has absolutely nothing to do with being cold or manipulative? What if it's actually a sign of something way deeper going on inside? We're about to see how this is often a reaction, not an action, something learned and much less intentional than you might think. Okay, so let's start with what I call the silent misunderstanding. We have to kind of flip our perspective here. Instead of asking, what does this silence mean for me? We need to ask, what is happening inside them right now? And this is where the huge disconnect happens. Our perception, what we feel, is that they're being cold, manipulative, maybe just totally indifferent. But the reality? The reality is often the complete opposite. They're overwhelmed. They're in a state of self-protection. They're not feeling too little. They're feeling way too much. So where does a reaction like this even come from? I mean, this isn't some strategy someone just decides to whip out in an argument. No, this is a learned response, something that gets wired in deep, and it usually starts a long, long time ago. Think about how this becomes automatic. It's a story that unfolds over years. It starts in childhood. Maybe when you expressed a big feeling, you were ignored. Or maybe it just made a bad situation even worse. Over and over, your brain learns a simple but powerful lesson. Showing emotion is dangerous. So by the time you're an adult, it's not a choice. It's a reflex, a survival reflex. And really, this is the core of it. The brain's logic becomes incredibly simple. If every time you try to talk about how you feel, it ends in pain, rejection, or more fighting, well, the brain does the math, and it comes to one conclusion. Silence became the safer option. And you can probably picture the kinds of experiences that teach this lesson, right? Things like being told you're overreacting or you're too sensitive, or when you try to explain yourself and you just get judged for it. And then there's that deep fear of being a burden on other people. Every single one of those moments is like another layer of reinforcement, teaching you the same thing. It's just better to say nothing. Okay, so we've talked about the past, the psychology, but now let's get into the biology, because this is where it gets really fascinating. This isn't just a choice, it's a response. In that moment of shutdown, it's not a preference anymore. It becomes an involuntary biological thing. And the key concept here is something called the freeze response. Now, you've heard of fight or flight, I'm sure. Well, this is the third option. And when your nervous system feels that same kind of emotional danger it learned about as a kid, it can hit the freeze button. And here's what's so wild. The mind can just go blank. Finding words feels impossible because for a moment, that part of your brain is literally offline. The best way to think about it is like a biological circuit breaker. Seriously, it's a perfect analogy. So let's walk through the steps of this nervous system shutdown. First, there's the trigger, an emotional overwhelm that feels just like a power surge. Step 2, the nervous system does what it's designed to do. It trips the breaker to stop an overload. And the result? Shutdown. Words, complex thoughts, they just go offline. It's not a rejection of you, it's a protection of them. Now, this is a really, really important distinction to make. We're talking about two kinds of silence. There's the protective freeze, which is involuntary. It comes from fear. The person feels totally blank and overwhelmed. But then there's punitive stonewalling. That is intentional, it's rooted in control, and it's used to punish someone. They might look the same from the outside, but inside they are worlds apart. Okay, so understanding all this is one thing, but what do you do? In the moment when that silence happens, how do you actually bridge that gap without accidentally making everything worse? So let's look at what a partner can do. Here's what doesn't work. More pressure, confrontation, demanding, why aren't you talking to me? That's like trying to flip that circuit breaker back on while the power is still surging. It just won't work. What does help is the exact opposite. Patience, reassurance, things like it's okay, take your time. Respecting their need for space.
That's what lets the system calm down. And this is the big mental shift you have to make. The goal isn't to break the silence. That's not it. The goal is to create safety. You're not trying to get them to talk. You're trying to signal to their nervous system that everything is okay. Because once that feeling of safety comes back, the words will follow.
And really, that idea of safety is everything. It's not just about what to do in the moment. It's about building a safer connection overall, moving from just reacting to the silence to actually preventing it. Because if this pattern just keeps going, it's really dangerous for a relationship. All those unexpressed emotions, they don't just disappear, they build up, they turn into resentment, they create this huge emotional distance. And the most ironic part? The very person who goes silent to feel safe ends up feeling totally alone and unseen. And this really brings it all together. It's not the absence of emotion. It's the result of feeling too much and not knowing how to express it safely. That silence isn't emptiness. It's fullness. It's an overflow.
So, the takeaway question for all of us is this: how can we make expressing our feelings feel safe instead of dangerous? How can we, in our own relationships, create a space where speaking up finally, truly feels safer than staying silent?